Hi there, and thank you for coming back to watch our next discussion. We're here at ZertoCON 2019, and I'm joined by Jeff Smith, Field CTO for Zerto. Thank you for
Nice to see you,
being
sir.
here to chat.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about downtime, something no one wants.
No one wants.
So let's start with what does it do to organizations that incur too much downtime? Like, what have you seen in your travels?
Yeah, so, and downtime has kind of morphed over the years, right? It's always been, how do I measure downtime and what does it mean? It was always, it's going to be a disruption to my IT. Nowadays, it's really more than a disruption to IT. It's how does it affect my revenue? How does it affect my customer brand? How does it affect my productivity that moves in with it? And then how do I maintain my customers if I have downtime? Because in this day and age, if you go down, a lot of customers have the choice to leave really fast. So downtime traditionally, which was a kind of a disturbance to your internal IT, has now become very critical to business as to, I can't have downtime.
So when you think about companies of different sizes, does downtime affect them differently, or is it pretty much, it doesn't matter anymore?
That's what I love about IT. You know, traveling the world and you talk to every organization, they'll all tell you the same thing, right? My IT is the most important thing in the world. If it goes down, babies are going to starve, you know, people are going to die, airlines are going to crash. So everybody's IT is extremely important to them. So it doesn't matter whether you're the mom and pop baker store on the corner or whether you're the largest airline in the world handling millions of transactions a year. Downtime is critical to them. So if you look at some analyst reports, they'll go anywhere from $100,000 an hour to up to $500,000 an hour for unplanned downtime that goes with it. So I would say that downtime to everyone, no matter where they're at, as IT has just become a part of our lives, is critical to every single business across the board.
And when people think about, you know, we have the best security in the world, we have the best whatever, downtime isn't just someone hacked me, or it's the tornado hit, or someone flipped the wrong breaker, or, you know, somebody dug up whatever, right? You know, we call backhoes large form factor fiber finders, you know, things like that. But one of the things that's really become sort of a scourge is ransomware, and that results in downtime plus some other challenges. What are some of the bigger recent ransomware events you've heard about that are really sort of scary?
Yeah, so if you look at, you know, no one wants to be embarrassed by advertising that they've been hit by ransomware, but if you look at it from it's relatively new from a threat perspective and vector that goes out there. You know, it started probably hitting in 2013 and has morphed and become a whole lot more popular with things like Bitcoin, et cetera, where they can just, you don't have to send me money, now you can send me virtual money that goes into it. So no matter what industry you're in or have seen, you'll hear about it out there in the marketplace. And it affects the largest organizations that you would never find, even financial organizations where you're like, oh my gosh, they should be really protected. They're like, no, we got hit with a ransomware bug, and it really cost us a lot. Oftentimes it takes down their entire data center. And so how do I recover from that becomes very critical in their environments.
I mean, some of the effects that I've seen over the last couple of years, I mean, there was a big city government in the South that was nailed pretty hard. Obviously, what happened in the UK a couple years ago with, what was it called?
The bug that went through there?
Yeah. I mean, it killed people. I mean, potentially. So, yeah, ransomware is not just about money either.
No.
So that means that we have to be able to recover quickly. And so that's one of the things Zerto's helping us do, correct?
Yeah, and Zerto is really good about that. So whether it's within seconds or minutes or hours when they've been hit, our continuous data protection that goes into our journal allows us to work much like a DVR would. If someone comes in and says you're hit with the ransomware, you can just hit that DVR button back to whatever time it was and restart and start playing from there. So our continuous data protection and the journaling associated with that really gives us a market edge from that standpoint. It's no longer, hey, I need to go restore something from backup somewhere that we've had in the past. It's really, how do I rewind, recover, and move forward? And even more predictively, and what's really trending from a Zerto perspective, we have a lot of organizations that are starting to look at security proactively. How do I use Zerto to stand up my production environment within minutes in a test bubble and then proactively hit it against all the known vulnerabilities that are out there, and that then harden my environment for that. So now my security is really becoming a proactive measure as opposed to reactive within the ransomware.
So ransomware is one threat. What are some of the other threats that organizations are facing, really, when we think about, you know, downtime and potential for business impact?
Yeah, so as you look at technology trends, and everyone talks about digital transformation, whatever that might be, right? So that starts opening up new threats and vectors associated with it. As your data, instead of residing within your own 4 data center walls, where we typically have the 3 vectors of security, right? It's the perimeter, the access within there, and then the data within the 4 walls and the accessibility into it. The explosion of data out into the world has really given more attack vectors or threats within an organization. And whether it's malicious, internal, or just people out there doing regular business, those explosion of data points really create a heightened awareness of threats that can come into your environment, whether they're malicious or unplanned or whatever it might be. So it's really, how do we start protecting against that, right? When you have trillions of mobile devices sitting out there. You have edge gateways that are recording everything that have to be brought in to the 4 data center walls. Everybody's connected from an IT perspective now. Your customers aren't just your internal in how my ecosystem sitting there. It's millions of customers that I have to hit that expect to see my data. So that's one just explosion that we're seeing in threats. You have people with more of you bring your own devices to work. People want that freedom to go against different things, different mobile apps, et cetera, that you have to go against. So not only is the explosion, it's also the device availability that goes with that and the availability of different hardwares. And then it's the diversification and everything that goes with it as we grow our workforces and diversify that. So we're seeing threats, and I won't necessarily call them malicious threats, but there are threats to IT as far as keeping it resilient every day.
One of the things that's also happening is that applications are getting bigger and more distributed. So, if we think about some legacy data protection disaster recovery type tools, you had to really think about how you wanted to protect them while you were architecting them. You still have to do that to a point, but Zerto's made that somewhat easier as well, especially with Zerto 7 and some of the newer technologies with things like virtual protection groups and things like that, right?
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little about how those can help organizations basically better protect these large distributed applications?
Yeah, so when we look at the distribution of applications, it's really, most organizations are still, I'd probably say 90% of their revenue is driven from a transactional database, and then you see an explosion of these non-transactional applications or distributed applications sitting out there on their peripheral. Most of those are built out in the cloud, which even when the notorious cloud that's sitting out there still has to have the resiliency associated with those. So you have application resiliency built in, but they're still fundamentally run on the same things that all IT has always been run on. You need network, you need IOs that go with it, you need CPU, you need RAM, and you need storage that protects that. All of that requires resiliency, and what we're really seeing is a move from a hardware resilient traditional workload perspective, moving that into the software defined world and really using software to add that resiliency from an entire data set standpoint. That's where Zerto really plays into with our continuous data protection. We have application consistency groups that go in there, our virtual protection groups, the ability to go back to a file if we need to and pull back from that. So all of that from a platform standpoint with top of our data and analytics really gives clients the full breadth of a platform to move but beyond a traditional, what I'll call disaster recovery, business continuity standpoint, and even long-term retention, and move to IT resilience, which is really maintaining that always on to maintain the speed of business, is the way I look at it from a Zerto perspective.
Very good. Jeff, thank you for joining us for this discussion, and I hope you have a great rest of the show.
No worries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you for watching, and we're going to be coming back in just a minute with our next interviewee, who is, about 20, 25 minutes, Lindsay Zwart from Microsoft. We'll be talking about Azure and Zerto. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you shortly.
Thank you.